The FDA sparking backlash after saying there is not enough evidence to recommend avoiding ultra-processed foods, or UFPs. Many doctors disagree, including our next guest. Dr. Marc Siegel says there are strong links between these foods and a number of health conditions. We'll get his thoughts in just a moment. First, let's get to Alexandria Hoff. She's live in Washington. So, Alex, why did the committee give a pass to these ultra-processed foods?
Well, Sandra, part of it was that the Dietary Advisory Committee found that the definition of ultra-processed foods to be inconsistent between studies. The authors wrote that their current conclusion, or lack thereof really, was, quote, based on evidence graded as limited, but might change if a more rigorous definition of ultra-processed foods is developed and further studies are conducted. Now, of course, most people understand ultra-processed to mean packed with preservatives, emulsifiers, artificial colors, and sweeteners. The report's guidance is meant to shape messaging and federal spending on things like food assistance and school lunches, but actual policy decisions will come down to the incoming administration.
About half the school lunch program goes to processed food. About 70% of food stamps go to processed food. 10% of food stamps go to sugar drinks, to sodas. We're creating diabetes problem in our kids by giving them food that's poison.
Trump's pick for HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been vocal about talking about taking on the food industry, which Senator Bernie Sanders actually called this week exactly correct. RFK has also criticized dependence on weight loss drugs like Ozempic, which does contrast with fellow Trump transition team member Elon Musk's take on that. He wrote on X, quote, nothing would do more to improve the health, lifespan, and quality of life for Americans than making GLP inhibitors super low cost to the public. Nothing else is even close. Now back to the advisory committee. They did recommend Americans eat more plant-based foods and limit products high in sugar, sodium, and saturated fat. Sandra.
All right, Alex Hoff on that live in Washington. Thank you. John?
All right, Sandra, let's bring in Fox News senior medical analyst Dr. Marc Siegel. And Doc, when you take a look at it, I mean, there might be reason to declare war on ultra-processed foods, as RFK Jr. swears that he's going to should he become the HHS secretary, which is looking quite likely. Because take a look at this. The obesity rate in the United States, according to the CDC, now 40.3%. 702,880 people in 2022 died from heart disease, 608,000 from cancer, 165,000 from stroke. I mean, we are a sick nation, Doc.
And John, that's a little trick that advisory committee played there. Unfortunately, it would be, those guidelines would be followed from 2025 to 2030, and the FDA usually follows the guidelines of its panels. But here's the trick. We know that weight gain and obesity directly cause what you just talked about: heart disease, diabetes, even certain forms of cancer, gastrointestinal cancers. We know that ultra-processed foods lead to weight gain. So that's the stutter step there. Well, ultra-processed foods lead to weight gain, and obesity leads to these health issues. But the fact that it's a two-step process gives them an out. And I find that very, very disappointing, because as an internist, I'm treating these problems after they occur, and I consider obesity a disease. And as Alex just said, what is an ultra-processed food? It includes emulsifiers, preservatives, colorings, things that actually cause people to eat more of it, even if it's empty calories, high fructose corn syrup, salt and sugar, things that are very bad for you.
Just go up and down the aisles of your average grocery store and you'll see an awful lot of processed food. So there's this case in Pennsylvania of this teenager who's suing Big Food. Listen to this on the case. Bryce Martinez was diagnosed at 16 with fatty liver disease and type 2 diabetes after regularly consuming Bagel Bites, Sour Patch Kids, Honey Bunches of Oats, Hot Pockets, Pepsi, Minute Maid, Slim Jims, Chex Mix, Cheez-Its, and Starburst and other ultra-processed products throughout his childhood. You might ask yourself, where were the parents in all of this? But there's no question that this stuff is being pushed to kids each and every day.
And it's on the store shelves. Over 70% of what's on your store shelves at a supermarket, this kind of food. I can't obviously comment on the legality of this, whether he's going to win the lawsuit, but clearly there's a direct link there. Now, what can be done about it? Alex also pointed to this in that great report. We've got to figure out a way to get healthy foods out there instead. I know they're more expensive, but maybe that's where supplement and money should come from, to get the school lunches fixed, to get them to where you have no alternative. People are going to eat. Kids are going to eat at school, but they might find a French fry tastier, so they rush there, or something ultra-colored when you're very young, you know, trying to get red dye number 3 out of there because it looks so bright and cherry that young children are drawn to it. Very, very unhealthy, and there's a lot of evidence that these foods lead to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder as well. So it's a long haul to do this, but we got to start very young with children. John, your figure of over 40% of adults being obese, over 20% of children are now obese.
I mean, that's
starting
just
down a treadmill.
That's just nuts. Hey, want to get your quick take on something else, and that is that California is investigating whether a child got bird flu from raw milk. This is something that raw milk is one of the things that RFK Jr. really promotes. Do we know if raw milk is safe?
Well, look, I'm all in on RFK Jr. on the processed foods, ultra-processed foods. When it comes to raw milk, I like the idea of pointing out that raw milk is like a milkshake and it's got a lot of nutrients, but I like pasteurization. I like pasteurization. You've got to kill off the bacteria and the viruses. And yes, bird flu is linked right now to milking, and milk people that do use those machines are getting it. That's dangerous, and we don't want that into the community at large. So stick to pasteurized milk, but make it healthier in terms of what else it has in it.
All right. Thank you for the check-in, Doc. We really appreciate it. We'll see you again soon.
Great to see you, John.